Hello, everyone. So I've been covering a lot of the modern progressive bands lately, and I don't want people to get the idea, if they're tuning into the channel and they're younger modern metal fans, that in order to be progressive, you have to either be ironic or mocking or kitschy, or that you have to have just a random odd time signature to make your music sound more complicated than it actually is. Progressive, which doesn't really mean anything anymore, used to mean that you had a challenging scope of music that really did expand boundaries. And just because you happen to have odd time signatures here or there doesn't mean that you're progressive. And there were bands that used to actually challenge the notion of what traditional genre music was. And I wanted to look today at a band that I wouldn't like if it was relegated to the dustbin of time. This is a band that honestly has not really been successful in anything that they've tried to do. But the scope of their work, every record they have put out, it has this massive undertaking, and unlike modern bands, where they don't have a full idea of a presentation they want to give to the audience, instead they just give you a multitude of songs that are mathematical. This is a band that had a scope outlined first for each record before they designed the music to fit it. And that kind of ambition is something that I think is really lost on most bands, progressive or not. This band, I think, regarding the ambition that they bring to the table, tends to get crushed under the weight of its own ambition, in that despite that they have such lofty goals, most of them just don't come to fruition in the way that I imagine the author had intended, or they are just not really enjoyable in any aspect. And that's a tough call, because in interviews, the main songwriter has said that he wants the music to not give you a sense of comfort. And, if you're listening to metal, you want that sense of confrontation. You want to be on your toes. You don't want to be comforted. None of the records under the Ephel Duath moniker are comforting, and they're all different. And most of them are difficult listens, not because the music is challenging, but because it's abrasive in a sense that it's just not enjoyable. And that's difficult for me to admit, and it sounds like it's only a subjective trait, but the music is inherently designed to be shocking in terms of the dynamic that's being used. As you're listening to it, it's just consistently jumping between very quiet, melancholy, like noodly type of guitars, to really abrasive, shocking, harsh, like strummed, very fast chording with like kind of hardcore type of vocals over it, and then it melts back into that kind of peaceful, tranquil, jazzy type of noodly guitar that's very meandering, and the songs don't have any semblance of character that would designate each song as being different from the next. None of the songs are cohesive. It really is just a tapestry of moods that isn't assembled in any way to give the sense of ebb and flow. There's no natural dynamic. It's just shock after shock. And the band has done it with every release. They started with the Formula record. There was a demo beforehand, but the Formula record, it kind of sat comfortably alongside the acid trip black metal that happened at the turn of the century. Bands like Fluidity, When, Psy, you can even compare it to like Arcturus, stuff like that. And it was probably, looking back at the discography, it's probably the most normal. It's the most easy to sit through, because it's a genre that, even though at the time was kind of mutating, like that kind of acid trip black metal was new, it still belonged enough to that weird mutation of black metal where it didn't take you off guard nearly as much as the later material did. After that, he put out a record where every song was designated by a color, and that's a really awesome, lofty goal, to try to get the music to imbue the color that you're trying to get across. That record, despite that, it's just completely shocking. Not in terms of like, oh, I feel like this material is challenging what is right or wrong, but it's just orally shocking. It hits you immediately with a really abrasive saxophone. As much as you would like to think that each of the colors he's trying to imbue are going to be detailed by the music, the songs are kind of interchangeable, and it kind of doesn't really work. The next record, Pain Necessary to Know, we're going to talk about a little later. This is the record where the jazzy aspects of the guitar and the metallic aspects of the guitar are really divorced in a way where the production kind of adds to it. The guitar in both clean and distorted is a little muted. It feels like a shitty guitar on the neck pickup, noodling around until we get to the harsh, hardcore vocals and fast strummed parts. But at the same time, it seems like this is the best representation of the duality that Ephel Duath is trying to present. With every record, they try to take different styles of music and smash them together. And this one works for the most part because they don't marry at all. There's the jazzy part and then the metal part, and the jazzy part and the metal part. And it's not stitched together in any way. And the reason it somewhat works is because later on, when they put out the last full-length record that they did, Hemmed by Light, I can't remember the second half of it, Shined in Darkness, that one has the jazzy aspects and the hardcore aspects consistent, where the guitar isn't quite as varied in dynamic range between clean signal and dirty signal. It's just that noodly aspect of his jazz playing that is consistently distorted now, and it ends up sounding like carnival music. And the idea of the distorted guitar is to be confrontational, make you feel not at ease. And when you have these oddball jazzy melodies being played on a distorted guitar, that translation is lost. Whereas the early material, he relegated it to clean guitar, and then you have that dynamic shift when it becomes metallic, and the melody actually stands a little bit on its own. It doesn't sound so ridiculous coming from a distorted guitar. Plus, that record is borderline unlistenable because he had Karen Crisis on vocals, and she's fucking terrible. But before that, he put out a record called Through My Dog's Eyes. And this is, the idea is so ridiculous that he wanted to make a record from the viewpoint of his dog and have all of the songs showcase that kind of need to communicate with its owner. And on the surface, that's fucking silly as shit. But then I started thinking, I'm like, this could be a really interesting concept. The idea that you have a loyal friend that cannot communicate accurately to you what he's feeling, and to have there be a soundtrack to that aspect of communication that is foreign to us, that we don't understand because it's a different species. If he was going to do something adventurous enough to show me what that sounds like, that could be really cool. And it ended up being really embarrassing. The music just kind of felt like shitty saloon rock, and the aspects that are kind of trying to portray what the dog is communicating are the most basic, like, canine aspects you could think of, like about wagging your tail and shit. It sucks. And that's why I want to focus on a track from Pain Necessary to Know. This, I think, is the best representation of the band. And as I mentioned before, the aspects of what the band are do not commingle well at all. But there is something going on with this musical style where he deliberately wanted, with every release, to make the audience feel not at ease, whereas every progressive band nowadays gives the audience what they want to hear. They'll give you the odd time signature, they'll give you the breakdown, they'll give you the kitschy aspects, and they'll give you the nostalgia towards real progressive bands, all while winking at you while doing it. This is a band that doesn't do that. So I want to look at a song from it. This is probably one of the more cohesive songs on it. I keep going back to it if I'm going to listen to this record, mainly because there is a consistent melody that ebbs and flows, and all of the meandering aspects of it tidy up nicely at the end, where he kind of sticks to a theme. And in interviews before, he had mentioned that repetition is something that is for the weak, and he did not want to have it present in his music, but he gives you that little bit of repetition at the end in this song, and it kind of blends it all together in a way where the song feels like it makes a statement, whereas the other material on this record and on other records doesn't really have that same thing going on. So I want to look at this song, and I'll break it down as we go. There's a lot going on. I just want to stop there because that little melodic line that you hear at the very end of that is one of the main focal points of the song. And I understand if you're listening to this for the first time, all of that felt meandering as fuck. You can't find the song, and you're not supposed to. That's the style of the music, and despite the fact that there is a constant dynamic shift, there's the clean guitar and then the distorted guitar with the harsh sounding chords, there is a mood that is kind of captivating throughout. And I do like where the song takes me. I do wish that the styles were married well, but as I mentioned about that, how he does that on a later album, it totally doesn't work. I understand now, in retrospect, that it's not really possible to marry all of this under the metal umbrella. It just doesn't work melodically, and keeping the moods separate, clean and dirty, it gives this really nice dynamic that I think somewhat works, but the problem with it is that there's nothing to anchor it aside from these slight melodic flourishes that happen that you will hear repeated. And his goal is to not give you those repeats. So he's doing it to showcase the importance of it in this instance, but all of that other stuff surrounding it, it's already lost to the ether. Like, I know that there was a barrage of harsh chords and these kind of lush, clean melodies going on, but there's nothing that really sticks to the subconscious. And I've heard this song a million times, and the only things that I can remember really are the ones that he makes important via repetition. So I'm going to keep going with it, and you're going to hear that theme come back again, but the song, for the most part, has this kind of flow until the end. It's just kind of a meandering lurch towards an end that actually has some conclusivity to it. So we'll get there, and I'll explain it as it comes. So what you can see going on throughout the majority of the song is the constantly sabotaging the momentum. And this is something that great metal has consistent momentum. The momentum means something. A song gets from A to Z because of the way the dynamic shifts and tells a story. This just constantly robs you of it. And I think that's a reason why this band ended up not working out, and they're never going to be remembered in the same way that a lot of other progressive metal bands are going to be remembered. They just don't give the audience any sense of conventional songwriting in any way. And I understand, given the interviews, this is the goal of the music, but despite there being a fully realized artistic idea here, it does not work under the metal umbrella. And you could argue that it's not metal at all. I mean, he did come, despite the fact that the first records are pretty black metal infused, this is pretty divorced from what metal is. You have the hardcore sounding vocals. There's probably more in common with like Dillinger Escape Plan than actual metal here. But that being said, even within the hardcore genre, there's still not enough momentum here to kind of give you something that will be appreciated by audiences, modern or not. So we'll keep going, and we'll get to the end. So sorry to interrupt again, but I wanted to show you guys that he did return to that melody, and he played it in a way where the accents hit on beats that you didn't expect this time, if you were to remember how the melody was played initially. And it's unfortunate because you get this melody returning, and you want it to go somewhere, and then it doesn't. And you have that continued meandering guitar and random accents here and there. And like I said, the mood is consistent. I do enjoy the mood of the song, but there is no song. It really is just a long tapestry of mood. And even though there's this constant dynamic shifting going on, the mood being consistent almost works against its favor, because you just kind of get lost in it, and there's really nothing to grab onto except for the parts when the guitar gets distorted. But we'll keep going. So that bass line was the only thing that really kept that part together, and now it breaks into what's going to be the last movement of the song. This is a part that I think is successful mainly because the rest of the song is so meandering, but we'll give it a listen. love using that sound effect that preceded this part to bring it back together after that little guitar interlude. I really love this passage. The mood of it is really captivating. That high squeal over it that's consistent the whole time, really unnerving. This music is meant to be unnerving from start to finish, and I can't fault it for that. That's its greatest strength, is that despite all of the shit that's wrapped up in this kind of music, all of the meandering aspects, it maintains this kind of unnerving pulse to it, which you can't really get in a whole lot of bands, and that's probably its only success. Everything else about it really betrays any aspect of structuring, and yeah, it's vague. It's purposely vague in a very difficult way. Well, let's close it out. Sorry for the Chris Isaac. Anyway, so that is just one example of what this band can sound like, and that the aspects that are here, that are present in all the records, are that unnerving quality, the kind of attempt at fusing genres, but not really, still having them be separate enough where there are two different worlds colliding. Aside from that, every record should probably be listened to a little bit at least once, at least one song from each record, just more of as a case study than anything else. This is a really unique songwriter. This is a really unique band, and they're not going to be remembered. There's going to be plenty, like this I consider, because of how challenging it is, to be an actual progressive band. They're not doing tribute music to any bands in the past. They're really forging their own way, and I've said many times, forging your own way through combination of genres, it's not innovation, it's compilation. But with this, his take on both aspects of the genres he's attempting are unique to the point where he takes the least enjoyable aspects of both and smashes them together, but does not allow them to marry. And that is a feat in itself, to be able to have that much control at being completely uncontrolled. So for that, I have to commend the band. I have to commend the songwriter. I recommend at least taking a cursory glance at the discography if you're unfamiliar. They're definitely worth looking at least briefly, just to see what's out there. They are legitimate artistic statements, but very, very difficult to enjoy, and do not abide in any way to conventional songwriting or unconventional songwriting either. So thank you for listening.